Hall of Fame QB Dan Fouts just dropped a bombshell, saying the Browns should straight up cut Shedeur Sanders. But Browns owner Jimmy Haslam wasn't having any of it, and his furious response has the entire NFL buzzing tonight.
I think what surprised me is when he manipulated the draft and told the Ravens not to draft him. That, to me, you're going to be in a first-class organization. You're going to learn from a lot of different people there, and I thought that might have been a better avenue. Instead of being in an organization that is not good at developing quarterbacks, ownership hasn't been good, team hasn't been good, you get bad habits. And I think being in a good organization and understanding top to bottom would have been more important. But I think he'll get a chance. I just don't know if you get a chance for a bad team, then people say, yep, see, told you, he couldn't.
The Cleveland Browns organization just witnessed something absolutely explosive, and it's got Jimmy Haslam seeing red. When NFL legend Dan Fouts suggested that cutting Shedeur Sanders might not be the worst idea, the Browns owner reportedly lost his mind behind closed doors. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about one controversial comment. This is about a young quarterback who manipulated the entire NFL draft, rejected the Baltimore Ravens, and is now sitting on Cleveland's bench while critics circle like vultures. What Fouts revealed about Shedeur's current situation in Cleveland will shock you, and the insider details about why he's not starting over Dillon Gabriel. Brother, you're not ready for this drama.
Right. Well, see, with that, hearing that he did not want to go to the Baltimore Ravens was a definite head scratcher. But when you have certain other details about that situation come out, when he does have the utmost respect for Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens were not the only team that was denied in that specific metrics, because from a player, or never mind the player, but from a competitor, you go into the draft with the idea that you want to go play, right? Everybody has this burning desire. I have on a Barry Sanders jersey because of the dominance of the Detroit Lions in Monday night's showcase. But this jersey showcases a name on the back, right? That's why every single player that's the dream, that's the expectation. Well, when you hear why Shedeur denied Baltimore, when you hear why Shedeur didn't want to go to Philadelphia, now leaving the thought to say, hey, Cleveland was my way to play sooner rather than later. Yes. Do their management have questions? Yes. Does their, talent around them have enough questions? Yes. But that still doesn't deny the fact, as a man, to say, I still yet want to have an opportunity to definitely play. But this is the thing, too, that I would want to hear your perspective on.
You've got this rookie quarterback who comes in with all the hype in the world, the son of a legend, and now he's caught in the middle of the most toxic quarterback controversy we've seen in recent memory. Let me paint you the picture of just how wild this situation has become. Dan Fouts, the Hall of Fame quarterback and longtime analyst, was asked point-blank about Shedeur's future in Cleveland.
Well, it depends on how many quarterbacks you were going to keep. But once, you had a quarterback room with 3, then, I think they would have been wrong to cut him. I don't know if there was enough sample size. We did see him play well, and then we saw him play poorly. And he's probably somewhere in between. He's like all other college quarterbacks. They try to be the college quarterback in the pros, and you can't do it. And I think that was the one thing I saw with Shedeur. You can't escape. You got to get the ball out. You got to live to see another play, like all of these things. And it's not just him. Cam Ward's going through this now. Yeah. Jackson Dart's going to go through this. You think you have more time, and you don't. And I think Dillon Gabriel, from what I was told, was better at doing that early in his career there with the Browns. But I hope Shedeur...
And what he said next? Man, it sent shockwaves through that organization, from the front office all the way down to the equipment managers. When asked if the Browns would be wrong for cutting Shedeur Sanders, Fouts didn't sugarcoat anything. He basically said that with only 3 quarterbacks on the roster, yeah, it would be wrong to cut him. But here's where it gets interesting.
Get that opportunity with Cleveland. I just don't want him to get in a situation where he gets sacked 3 times and throws 2 interceptions and people say, I told you he couldn't play. I think he can play, but I do think I think he has to wait a little bit. I wouldn't want to put him in now, but that doesn't mean he won't be playing by the end of the year.
The way he said it, it wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement. It was more like, well, I guess you can't cut him because you don't have enough bodies. But before we dive into that explosive exchange, let's talk about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. And this is where Shedeur's story becomes absolutely fascinating. From a chess master perspective, this kid didn't just enter the NFL draft hoping for the best. No, sir. He played the system like a seasoned veteran before he even stepped foot in a professional facility. According to Fouts, Shedeur Sanders manipulated the draft process. He told teams not to draft him. The Baltimore Ravens. Nope, not happening. And apparently, Baltimore wasn't the only team that got the cold shoulder. Now think about this for a second. You're coming out of college, and you're telling the Baltimore Ravens, one of the most successful organizations in the NFL, with a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Lamar Jackson and a coaching staff that knows how to develop talent. You're telling them, thanks, but no thanks? That takes some serious confidence, or some serious delusion. The jury's still out on which one it was, but here's where Shedeur's thinking starts to make sense, and this is why I've got to give the kid some credit. He looked at the Ravens situation and saw Lamar Jackson firmly entrenched as the starter. He looked at Philadelphia and probably saw Jalen Hurts in the same position. These are young, established quarterbacks who aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So what does Shedeur do? He identifies Cleveland as the spot where he can actually see the field sooner rather than later. Joe Flacco isn't getting any younger. And let's be honest, Cleveland's quarterback situation has been a revolving door for decades. The kid saw an opportunity to compete for real playing time, not just sit on the bench for 3 years learning the system. That's not manipulation. That's strategic thinking. That's a competitor who wants to compete, not ride the pine. Every single player in the NFL has that burning desire to see their name on the back of that jersey on Sunday afternoon. Shedeur looked at the landscape and made a calculated decision about where he'd have the best shot to prove himself. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. And this is what's really eating at Jimmy Haslam and the Browns front office right now. Despite all that strategic maneuvering to get to Cleveland, despite choosing the Browns over more stable organizations, Shedeur Sanders is sitting behind Dillon Gabriel on the depth chart. And according to Dan Fouts' sources, and this guy has connections throughout the league, Gabriel has been better in practice, more ready, whatever that means. Now this is where we need to have a real conversation about what's happening behind closed doors in Cleveland. Fouts didn't just throw out some generic coach speak about competition and development. He got specific and brutal. He said Shedeur is like all other college quarterbacks, trying to play college ball in the pros, and you can't do it. Those aren't the words of someone who's impressed with what he's seeing in practice footage or hearing from his contacts inside the organization. Look, we've seen Shedeur play both well and poorly in his limited opportunities. That's the reality check that nobody wants to talk about. The kid has talent. Fouts himself voted him 3rd in the Heisman voting, showing he respects what Shedeur accomplished in college. But college success and NFL readiness are 2 completely different animals. Fouts broke it down perfectly. You can't escape. You gotta get the ball out. You gotta live to see another play. And that right there is the difference between college and the pros. In college, you can improvise your way out of trouble. You can rely on superior athleticism against inferior competition. In the NFL, every single defender is a freak athlete who's been playing this game at the highest level for years. The speed of the game is what breaks most rookie quarterbacks. Fouts mentioned guys like Cam Ward and Jackson Dart, who are going through the same struggles right now. You think you have more time than you do, and suddenly you're on your back wondering what just happened. But here's what makes this situation even more complicated. And this is where Jimmy Haslam's frustration really starts to make sense. The Browns aren't exactly known for developing quarterbacks. Fouts called them out directly on this, saying they're not good at developing quarterbacks, and that the ownership hasn't been good. Team hasn't been good. That's a Hall of Famer essentially saying that Cleveland is where young quarterbacks go to pick up bad habits. So you've got this catch-22 situation. Shedeur chose Cleveland because he wanted to play sooner rather than later. But now that he's there, the very organization he chose might not be equipped to properly develop him for long-term success. And if he gets thrown into action too early and struggles, the critics will come out in full force saying they knew he couldn't play at this level. It's a no-win situation, and that's what's driving Haslam crazy. He's got a rookie quarterback with enormous potential and enormous expectations, but he's stuck in an organizational structure that historically hasn't been great at maximizing quarterback talent. But wait, there's more to this story that makes Shedeur's situation even more precarious. So, Browns have 2 first-round picks in what's supposed to be a quarterback-heavy draft coming up. Think about what that means for Shedeur's future. If Cleveland decides to use one of those picks on a quarterback, suddenly Shedeur isn't the young developing prospect anymore. He becomes the guy who couldn't beat out Dillon Gabriel and is now competing with yet another high draft pick for playing time. Fouts was brutally honest about this reality. I don't even know if he's going to get an opportunity with Cleveland. That's not speculation. That's an industry insider looking at the situation and seeing the writing on the wall. Here's what really bothers me about this whole situation, and why I think Jimmy Haslam has every right to be frustrated with critics like Fouts. This isn't just about football performance. This is about giving a young man a fair opportunity to prove himself. Shedeur Sanders has handled himself professionally in Cleveland. By all accounts, he's been learning, listening, and not trying to play the "don't you know who I am" card. He's taken the coaching, put in the work, and stayed ready for his opportunity. But instead of getting that opportunity, he's watching from the sidelines while people debate whether he should even be on the roster. That's got to be eating at him, and it's definitely eating at his family, including Dan Sanders, who recently made comments about how hard it is to gain experience from the bench. And you know what? Dion's absolutely right. There's only so much you can learn from watching. At some point, you need real game reps against real NFL competition to truly develop as a quarterback. You need to feel that pressure, experience that speed of game that Fouts was talking about, and learn how to make those split-second decisions that separate good quarterbacks from great ones. Quarterbacks from great ones. The frustrating part is that Cleveland's season is essentially over anyway. They're not making the playoffs. They're not competing for anything meaningful. This would be the perfect time to see what they have in Shedeur Sanders, to give him some real game experience and evaluate whether he's part of their future or just another developmental project that didn't pan out. Instead, they're sticking with veterans and established players in meaningless games while their rookie quarterback, the guy who specifically chose their organization over better situations because he wanted to play, sits on the bench learning. Nothing that he can't learn in practice, but here's where I'm going to defend Shedeur in a way that might surprise some people. Everyone wants to criticize him for manipulating the draft, for rejecting Baltimore, for thinking he could come in and start right away. But you know what? At least he bet on himself. At least he had the confidence to believe he could compete at the highest level instead of accepting a backup role from day one. Look at the alternative. If he had gone to Baltimore, he'd be sitting behind Lamar Jackson for the next 5 years, learning the system, getting maybe a handful of snaps in blowout games. Same thing in Philadelphia behind Jalen Hurts. At least in Cleveland, Even if things aren't going according to plan right now, he's got a realistic path to playing time. And let's be real about something else. Dan Fouts questioning whether Shedeur should be cut? That's the kind of old-school, traditional thinking that has kept too many talented players from getting legitimate opportunities in this league. Just because a rookie isn't ready to start in Week 1 doesn't mean you should give up on him completely. The truth is, most great quarterbacks needed time to develop. Tom Brady wasn't starting as a rookie. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for years. Patrick Mahomes didn't start his rookie season. Development takes time and patience and organizational commitment. But here's what makes Cleveland's situation different and more complicated. Dan Fouts laid out the nightmare scenario that everyone in the Browns organization is probably thinking about but not saying out loud. What if they throw Shedeur into a game? He gets sacked 3 times, throws 2 interceptions, and suddenly the narrative becomes, "See, we told you he couldn't play." That's the fear that's keeping him on the bench. Not that he can't play, but that he might fail publicly and permanently damage his confidence and reputation. It's a protection mechanism, but it's also a limitation. The reality is, every quarterback is going to have bad games. Every quarterback is going to throw interceptions and take sacks and make mistakes. The question is whether your organization is committed to working through those growing pains, or if they're going to panic at the first sign of struggle. Based on Cleveland's history, you can understand why there might be some concern about their ability to stick with a young quarterback through inevitable rough patches. This is an organization that has cycled through more quarterbacks than most fans can remember, and very few of them got a legitimate chance to develop and grow. So here we are, stuck in this impossible situation where everyone has valid points, but nobody has a clear solution. Jimmy Haslam is frustrated because his rookie quarterback, who chose Cleveland specifically to get playing time, isn't getting that playing time. Dan Fouts is concerned that throwing Shedeur into action too early could set him up for failure and permanently damage his career. Shedeur himself is stuck in the middle, doing everything right off the field, but not getting the opportunity to prove himself on it. And here's the kicker that makes this whole situation even more interesting. Cleveland's front office is probably looking at other teams and seeing rookie quarterbacks getting opportunities and succeeding. Jaden Daniels in Washington, Caleb Williams in Chicago, Bo Nix in Denver. These guys are getting real game experience, making mistakes, learning from them, and developing into legitimate NFL quarterbacks. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, who many experts thought had just as much talent as those guys, is riding the bench in Cleveland learning what exactly? How to hold a clipboard. How to watch other quarterbacks play the position he was drafted to eventually take over. The whole situation is a mess. And it's exactly the kind of mess that makes Jimmy Haslam lose his mind when critics start suggesting they should cut their losses and move on. But you know what I think is really happening here? I think this is about more than just football. This is about respecting a young man's decision to bet on himself and giving him the opportunity he was promised when he chose Cleveland over other situations. Shedeur Sanders didn't have to come to Cleveland. He could have accepted a backup role with a better organization and spent years learning behind an established starter. Instead, he took a risk, chose a situation where he thought he could compete for playing time, and now he's being criticized for that very decision. That takes guts, and it deserves respect. Even if he's not ready right now, even if Dylan Gabriel is performing better in practice, even if there are legitimate concerns about throwing him into action too early, he still deserves a fair opportunity to show what he can do. And here's my prediction. Shedeur Sanders is going to get his chance before this season is over. Maybe not as a starter, maybe not in the most ideal circumstances, but he's going to see the field. And when he does, he's going to surprise some people. This kid has been doubted before. People questioned whether he could play at Colorado when his dad became the coach. He proved them wrong. People questioned whether he could handle the pressure of being Deion Sanders' son while leading a major college program. He proved them wrong again. Now people are questioning whether he can play in the NFL, whether he was right to choose Cleveland, whether he has what it takes to succeed at the highest level. And you know what? I think he's going to prove them wrong one more time. The talent is there. The work ethic is there. The intelligence is there. The only question is whether Cleveland is going to give him the opportunity to put it all together, or if they're going to let outside criticism and internal politics keep one of their most promising young players on the sideline. Jimmy Haslam's frustration with Dan Fouts and other critics makes perfect sense when you look at it from that perspective. He's not just defending a player. He's defending a decision, a vision, and a belief that this young quarterback can be something special if given the right opportunity. The drama in Cleveland is just getting started, and Shedeur Sanders is right in the middle of it all. Whether that ends up being the best thing for his career or the worst thing remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be fascinating to watch it all play out. What do you think? Is Jimmy Haslam right to be frustrated with critics questioning Shedeur's place on the roster? Or are people like Dan Fouts just being realistic about a young quarterback who might not be ready for prime time? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more insider NFL analysis that you won't get anywhere else. This story is far from over, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.